Call to Rescue is a nonprofit organization housed here in Vancouver, Washington at the U.S. Digital Outreach Center. And we rescue kids from sex trafficking. 50% of all pimps are women. So it can be a woman coming up to your child and saying, or up to you as the parent even, and saying, I want your kids to be in the movies. I want it, your kid would make a fabulous model. And so it can start that way where there's deception on both the parent and the child's part. Of course, if it's a teenager, we have guys coming along to our teenage girls and boys saying, come on, we'll do something fun. And boy, you're cute. I don't know how come you don't have a boyfriend. And of course, the boyfriend role is really prominent in all of this. The coercion of being the boyfriend is probably the number one scenario that we find. Once a girl is taken in and has been deceived, so let's say we have a girl with a boy, and the guy is the pimp. And so the guy picks her up and says, you're so beautiful, you're so wonderful, I really love you, I want to be your boyfriend. That can take one day, it can take 1 hour, or it can take a month. If it's a prime target, he's going to take as much time as he needs to lure that girl in. Once she's lured in, and once she has had sex with anybody, he changes his whole tune. Nobody is ever going to want you again. You're ruined. Your parents are going to want having to do with you. You are dirty. You're filthy. And of course, then they use very, very abusive words that I'm not going to use on camera. And they start actually beating them or drugging them. So the child actually, the average age for a kid abducted in the United States is 12 to 13 years old. Or not abducted, but taken in sex trafficking, lured, coerced into sex trafficking. 12 to 13-year-old girl. She may have the body of a grown woman, but her emotions are still very young, and not knowing how to process all that and figure out that, no, my mom and dad will always love me. And as many times as you say that to your own child, when they're trapped in that victimization thing, it is very hard for them to recall that, because they are so beaten down and victimized by this verbiage that these horrible people are using on them, that they're pretty well trapped into it, don't know what to do. If you are a parent and your child goes missing and you live in Vancouver, Washington, we have fabulous news for you. Our local police are so proactive for us. I cannot thank the local Vancouver police, John Chapman, in charge of Vice, and Jeremy. I mean, these guys hunt for our children and understand the problem very thoroughly. So if your child goes missing, the first thing you do is you pick up the phone and you dial 911 and say, I have a missing child, as quickly as possible. The sooner you do it, the better off everybody is. As soon as you've picked up that phone, you've made your police report, they will say, go home, wait for your kid, and so you get somebody to stay there and do exactly what they say. And you also call to rescue, and we will get our task force out and we will help you, just because we know some of the areas, we're familiar with the city, some of the areas that are bad, and we're happy to go out and look also for your child. It's really amazing what flyers can do. Flyers are facial recognition, but flyers also say to the child, somebody's looking for you. And flyers also say to the pimp, somebody cares about this kid. Too many people care about this kid. There are too many flyers, and once in a while, they'll drop the child off because the child is hot, a hot item. And so our goal is to get as many flyers out as possible, to get our task forces out, and the police have asked us to be eyes and ears on the ground. So all we do is look, and when we think we found something, we dial that famous number, 911. So if you lose your child and you have put your police report in, the police ask you to wait 48 hours before they get very, very involved, unless, of course, it's an outright abduction. If it's an abduction, of course, they're going to be right on it, and there could be Amber Alerts, and those are all their decisions. But the 48-hour waiting period kind of looks like this. Your child is a runaway for the first 48 hours. To have your child moved into the category of a missing person, you wait the 48 hours, you get the police to change the name from runaway to missing person, and then you can contact the local media. The local media do not hardly ever take a case of a runaway child. They want a missing person child. They want to have waited that 48 hours before they blast out that child's vulnerability and the fact that that child's gone. So that 48 hours is a very, very serious amount of time. I mean, that 48 hours is very critical. And so call us as soon as you possibly can so that we can get in there in that 48-hour period and see if we can help you find those kiddos. And we've rescued kids that, ran away from school for the day, got downtown Portland, and within 6 hours, those two girls, both about 16 years old, were in a car with two 30-year-olds heading south. Of course, we didn't know they were heading south. But circumstances happened. Phones were pinged, and they were picked up kind of in Berkeley. We knew they were in Berkeley. Berkeley police missed them. They went on farther south, as we supposed, and so we alerted task forces south, and we finally got them back in Palmdale, California. The police were there, right on the job, doing a great job. So if you find yourself in that 48-hour waiting period, you've contacted the police, your child is missing, you're now on hold for 48 hours, that's when you do the pickup call to rescue. Get a hold of us, and then we will go to work to try to help you find your child and walk you through those first 48 hours. When a child is rescued in the Vancouver area, of course, there's a difference between minor children, 18 and under, and 18 and over. The 18 and over children, actually adults, we have a program for them that we try to help them get into housing through Vancouver Housing Authority and through PIC, which helps them with employment. Both of those organizations are fabulous to help call to rescue. And then if the child is under 18, there are many different avenues that the police go through and the probation and child services go through on where to put that child, how to put that child in a safe situation, and each child is evaluated on their own case. After a child has been abducted and rescued, what do we do with those children then? What do we do? How do we get them back to normal? The answer for that is, again, case by case, we go through each child. We do have wonderful counselors that are trauma counselors that we refer out to. And so parents or legal guardians have that choice. If they're already in the state system, if they've already been in foster care, then the state takes care of their rehabilitation. If Call to Rescues ask what to do, we get them to a trauma counselor as quickly as possible, because this is a long process. This is a huge, long process. And of course, the longer they've been trafficked, the longer the process to get them back to normal. And so it takes years of people loving them and being honest with them and being truthful to them and loving them back to health. For people who believe that this never happens in their communities, I always am shocked that they think it doesn't. Because if you Google your city and put in Vancouver, Washington, sex trafficking, you will have article after article after article pull up to show you how many children are gone, missing. How about missing children in Vancouver, Washington? All of those things, it will pull up under Google. The endemic disease that's happening today in sex trafficking in the United States has a solution. And the solution is that every parent, everyone that's involved with birthing a child, make sure that child is aware, protected, and kept safe in their lifetime. Most people want that for their children, but are very untrained about that. Of course, Call to Rescue, we have trainings on everything to get you up and running on safety for your family. Some quick tips for parents and children on staying safe. Number one, the mall is not a babysitter. So a lot of people take their children. I've known people that do this all the time. They take their 11 or 12-year-old child even to the mall, drop them off, and think that the security guard is the babysitter. But that's not true. That person has other responsibilities than taking care of all these kids. And so your child is then vulnerable because your child is let loose in the mall. Most people don't know not to use the Public restrooms in the mall. The public restrooms are very vulnerable. If you look at the mall in Vancouver and you look at how the restrooms are placed, you will see that there at the end of the hall is an exit. It's much safer to teach your children to use the bathroom at Penny's or Nordstrom's or somewhere that you're inside a store, where if something went wrong, you would be inside a store. And so that's a much safer place for your children to be using the restroom. A lot of people, when they go to the mall, don't even remember where they parked their car. By the way, we all do that. And so you could just take a picture of the number on the, on the row your car is parked in, or you could take a picture from the door you're walking in. Okay, my car's right there. So that when you come out, you're not taking your little, bing, 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 and it's a tip for anybody who wants to, hurt you or grab your purse or whatever they want to do, is you're standing around doing this. You're not paying attention to anything around you. And so you need to quit doing that. Remember where your car is, and then be safe inside your car. Get in the car, lock the doors before you do anything else. When you get in the car, if you have children, you put the children in the car, forget about getting their seatbelts on. Get the children in the car, get in the car, lock your doors, and then get over the back seat and lock your kids into their seatbelts. Because that whole scenario where a mommy is in the car with her back to a victimizer, and she can't pay attention, she's got babies, and so she's trying to get her kids in the car, she is so vulnerable. That happened to my own daughter. She said, "Mom, I was at the mall today and I was getting the boys in the car, and when I stood up to get into the car, a man had already bent over my body." And of course she has learned about her elbow, so she was in great shape. But if you did not have any self-defense training, she could have been in very bad shape, both her and all of her children. So it was a story that came into me that I had done a training, and I talked about being careful who you help in the parking lot. And it's not your responsibility to help everybody. It's your responsibility to make sure they get help. And so this lady parks her car, and there was this little old grandma sitting in her car going, "Honey, can you help me?" And she said, "I'll be right back. I'm going to get some help." Very smart. Went in, got the guard from Target, female. The lady comes out, and she goes over to grandma. There's a van at her back, and as soon as she bent over to start talking and helping grandma, the van door came open and somebody's hand came down onto the guard, the female guard. But she, being a guard and knowing what to do, had already called the little security guy, and so he was right there moments later to rescue her. Grandma was part of the scam. Grandma was part of the scam. So there's a different scenario that I would like to just speak about just for a second. And I had been doing a training, and I'd mentioned that 150,000 children are missing in the United States today. There's 150,000 children missing. After I said that, a lady came up to me, and she had 3 other siblings, and she was crying, and she said, "I hate the number 150,000. I said, "Why do you hate that?" And she said, "Because it doesn't count me. My mother was a drug addict, and she trafficked all 4 of us. So not every child goes missing. This group of children, 4 children, were trafficked by their own mother in their own house." A same thing that happens with child porn. It can happen in any house, in any community. We have to keep our eyes open, because there's so many ways a child can be hurt and abducted, or not even abducted, hurt and victimized.